Hey, awesome. Just want to say a big welcome to everyone from Community Medical Services. I am super excited to be with you all today. If you were here last time, you might know my face. If you weren't here last time, you might not know my face. My name is Adriana Skills. I am an account manager over at Know Your Talents. And Know Your Talents, we're partners with CMS, supporting you all with developing your leadership skills and even your awareness using our tool called the ProScan. So our topic for today and what we're here to discuss is a super important topic, and it influences actually almost every aspect of our lives, yet sometimes it goes overlooked. And that topic today is self-awareness. So in today's session, our goals will really be to uncover the essence of self-awareness and its potential impacts on your personal as well as your professional journey. We'll basically explore powerful benefits of self-awareness inside of behavior, as well as to being mindful of those pitfalls that we might fall into because of those behavioral traits that we have. Using the ProScan is a very technical practice and technique that can really support everybody involved with that self-awareness. So I'm super excited to get into our topic today and dive into self-awareness using that ProScan survey. So I had a poll earlier that just said, what is self-awareness? And those of you who answered the poll, good job. When in doubt, it's always all of the above. So thank you for that. When we talk about self-awareness, simply put, it's the ability to accurately perceive your own emotions and thoughts and behaviors in various situations. It's really understanding what we do, how we do it, and how it ultimately affects those people around us. When we look at self-awareness, I like to give examples because sometimes that can be easier for us to outline. Let's say, for example, you're somebody who doesn't like to impose on others. You have a hard time maybe asking for help, or you feel like, I just don't want to bother them with this. I'm just going to keep it to myself and figure it out. With self-awareness, you might recognize that what's causing this is maybe, perhaps respect for other people's time. You feel like, oh no, I just noticed that they're so busy. I can't ask them to spare a second. Maybe even two, you want to do this independently. You're like, oh, I'm the person who can do this best. Or maybe you fear the rejection of them saying, I can't help you. With self-awareness also too comes noticing how you express what you're trying to say. If you're not asking for help, you're ending up keeping that to yourself. You're not getting the support that you need, or you might even be struggling in your silence. You have to acknowledge how that impacts the people around you too. They might, shut down a little bit because they're like, oh, she never asked for help. She never wants me to be involved in this. I'm not going to help her out. Or even too, they might feel like, you've got this, you don't need any support. She's got this, she owns it, totally fine, when you ultimately do. So by being a little bit more self-aware of how it can show up for us, we can start to make actionable steps to being more aware and correcting those behaviors if they're not making us show up the way that we want to show up. When we look at self-awareness from zooming out, we really need to reflect on what happens when we don't have this self-awareness. And for those of us who are on this session today, you probably have taken that ProScan survey and have gained some self-awareness, which is awesome. But when we don't take that time to learn about ourselves, to learn how our actions, our reactions, or even to just the things that we say impact others. So let's take a moment to reflect on the potential repercussions of lack of self-awareness. Firstly, I would like you to consider the impact on your decision-making process. Sometimes when we lack self-awareness, we can fail to recognize our own biases and decisions, or even our emotional state, or even our true motivators. Having an awareness can sometimes even cloud our judgment and lead us to make choices that might not be in our best interest or align with our own personal core values. Maybe even too, looking at the fact that self-awareness plays a big role in understanding our emotions. I know when I look inside of myself, by practicing self-awareness, I'm really able to see, why am I reacting like this? What do I need to not react like this? What are those triggers that get me there? And without a clear understanding of our emotional triggers, we might find ourselves in a constant state of emotional turbulence. Sometimes this can even lead to increased stress or conflict, whether externally or even internally within yourself. And it can really significantly impact our emotional well-being, our own emotional well-being, and even to the emotional well-being of others. Sometimes too, lack of self-awareness can strain our relationships. If we're not able to really understand how we're coming across to others, it can lead to miscommunications and conflict, And essentially too, it could damage that relationship. And depending on who you're working with, for some of us, it's easier to build back up those relationships. And for some of us, it's not. So by having that self-awareness, you can really see how you're impacting the people around you. Looking at developing our own strengths too, when it comes to self-awareness, you doing that work and acknowledging, your areas of opportunity that you want to work with can really help you promote your growth. When we're looking to even at your professional or personal growth, professionally, it will increase your performance because you'll be more focused, you'll understand your strengths, how to maximize those strengths, and even too, how to adjust yourself if you're finding that maybe you're performing a little bit lower. All of these things and more go into having that self-awareness. It can really improve our overall well-being as individuals, our relationships, our performance, our decision-making, and even just our overall growth. So as we look into discovering self-awareness, we all know that it's very important in our growth, our relationships across the board, but it's not always the easiest thing to learn. And I can tell you from experience that a lot of people maybe just don't have that time to reflect on self-awareness. Maybe you're not really sure where to start. How do I do this work? Well, luckily, you all have access to your own personal pro scans that can help guide you through these conversations with yourself on really gaining that self-awareness and understanding how you show up. When we look at the pro scan, it's a phenomenal tool for gaining that self-awareness. And for those of you on the call that have taken the pro scan, if you remember any of your strengths, feel free to put them in the chat or even chime in. When we look at the pro scan, it can serve as like a mirror. It kind of reflects back our behavioral self, so we can take a good look of how we're showing up, and is that the way we want to show up? It allows us to understand our strengths, potential areas of opportunity, your unique communication and leadership style, and even how you might react under pressure, which is that red graph up on the screen. As we get into our discussion today, though, I just want to really emphasize that we're going to be focusing more so on the strengths in the areas of opportunity. We're going to have plenty of trainings every single month that center more so around the communication style, the leadership style, as well as the backup. Those are still really important conversations when it comes to self-awareness, but for the sake of time and making sure that we have some really great action steps after this, we're just going to focus in on strengths and areas of opportunity. When we're having this conversation, if you guys have your pro scan handy or even close by, or if you just want to make a little note to yourself, page 3 on the intensity chart is a really nice page to kind of stay on, because we'll be talking about your traits that are above the midline. As we get into our discussion today, I do want to just give a quick little recap on the 4 buckets of behavior. So when you're looking at your pro scan, you will see that there are 4 behavioral styles. There's dominance, extroversion, pace/patience, as well as conformity. When you're looking at your intensity chart on page 3, you will see a line right in the middle of that graph, and that's what we'll call the midline. So as we have our discussion today, you'll hear me say that above the midline, and that's traits that fall above that middle line for you. Everybody will have at least one of these traits above the midline. So as we're going through our discussion today, I want you to pay attention to which of those traits are yours. Even too, if maybe it's not a trait of yours, think of maybe somebody you know, somebody on your team who seems like this. What are some things that you can do to help promote their own self-awareness? When we're looking at the behavior, to break it down just a little bit further, our dominance, when it's above the midline, that's the take charge trait. When it's below the midline, that's the support trait. When extroversion is above the midline, that is the people trait. When it's below the midline, quite the opposite, the reserve trait. Patience above the middle line involves a lot of patience. When it's below, that's sense of urgency. Conformity above the midline, this is your systems trait. And when it's below, that's your independent trait. For the conversation we're having today and the detail that we need to get into, we're only going to be focusing on the high side of the trait, meaning when it's above the midline. So like I said, look at your intensity chart, look at any of those traits that are on or above that middle line. You might resonate with some of that information on the slide. They might be some good tips for you to keep in mind as you navigate self-awareness. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll start talking about our dominance trait first. Alrighty, and if you're looking at your intensity chart, I took a little snippet just to help those of us who maybe are like, what exactly am I supposed to look at? When you're looking at your intensity chart, that very first column on the far left-hand side is your dominance trait. If on that dynametric midline, your light blue extends above that, and your dominance trait can be anywhere. It could be all the way up here by intimidating or bold. It could be all the way down here by confident or curious. I want you to listen up because this might apply to you with that dominance trait above the midline. And it's super important to understand your strengths and be aware of those tools in your tool belt that you can maximize for your full potential. When we talk about self-awareness today, we're going to break it down into those two buckets: strengths, because it's really important for you to know which strengths you bring to the table so you can align it with projects, tasks, or even to just different communication needs that will support yourself or even your team. And then also two areas of opportunity. These might be maybe some blind spots you have, or sometimes even two, when we dive too far into our strengths, we start to notice, I need to pull back from this just a little bit. And here's why. So as we talk today, look at that dominance trait if you have it. If you don't, I want you to think of maybe somebody on your team, or it could even be to a friend, a family member, a mentor that has this trait. Think about some things that you could do to help them promote their self-awareness. For example, when we talk about our high dominance individuals, these people are usually natural pioneers. Individuals with high dominance feel an instinctive need to take charge in most situations. They're usually pretty confident self-starters, and they don't shy away from challenges. In fact, they actually thrive on them, which is one of my favorite things about high dominance individuals. They excel at keeping the big picture in focus, and typically their strategic approach to problem solving makes them pretty decisive in decision-making scenarios. You can really count on them to give you what they think, and I so appreciate that. Naturally, they're pretty direct and straightforward communicators. I'm not really afraid to say what anyone else will not say. And that's one thing I definitely lean on my high dominance for. I'm like, how can I just say this? And they'll just tell me, Adriana, you just need to say it. You know exactly what you want to say. And so I definitely lean on them for things like that. Typically, they believe in getting straight to the point, which can be extremely effective in those fast-paced situations as well, because they require sometimes clear and very concise instruction. Typically, too, our high dominance individuals have a very competitive spirit and a driving force. It usually pushes them to strive for excellence. So you'll feel that pressure from them. They really want to get that result. And they're very ambitious. And sometimes that can serve as a motivator for themselves or even two people on the team. I know when I see somebody working hard next to me, I want to work hard too, because I'm like, that's the vibe. That's what we're doing today. So if you have that high dominance and you're a leader with this trait, I really urge you to capitalize on these strengths. Use that self-awareness and really be mindful. Are there projects that are requiring maybe some firmer leadership? That's a natural strength of yours. Lean into that. Are there maybe difficult discussions that need to be initiated? That's easy for you. Be that point person. Be that person that initiates those conversations. Are there maybe some really complicated problems going on that need to be dissected and solved? You have that strength. Dive into those problems and really look at it in the big picture. Is there maybe an opportunity for innovation or enhancement in your current procedures? With that high dominance, you can take a zoomed out look and really see, is this getting us the result that we need? When you play in those arenas, when you dive into your strengths and really understand them, your awareness on what makes you you and what makes you feel good, where you can maximize those strengths, is a beautiful skill to have. Now, as we look at the opposite side, those areas of opportunity, those awareness opportunities, we need to remember that with great influence, comes great responsibility. And for those of you on this call that are leaders, you do have a great responsibility at hand. If you are a person who has that high dominance, you have a natural gift for being straightforward and being results oriented. However, it's crucial to balance that with empathy and sensitivity. And believe me, I know for those of you who have high dominance, especially if you don't maybe have high extroversion or high patience as well, sometimes that sensitivity is just not your favorite thing. But you have to sometimes meet people where they're at, especially too if you're in that leadership role, realizing that it's not something that comes very natural to you, but you do need to flex into that because sometimes the people around you will need that. Sometimes misunderstandings can occur if the other person perceives you even as too blunt. Maybe they'll shut down in the conversation. Big recommendation here is to actively seek out feedback from your team or your peers. Giving people permission around you is a really nice gift, especially if you have high dominance. Sometimes people can be a little intimidated or scared. And we don't want them to be that, because you have phenomenal strengths and we need them to see that more so than maybe these awareness opportunities. So be mindful that coming off too blunt can cause misperceptions. Ask for feedback from your team. Give them permission to give you feedback. And make sure you're asking yourself, do I really invite this feedback? And do I listen to this feedback? Do I make changes when somebody gives me that feedback? Another thing that our high dominance individuals might struggle with is sometimes working in a team, especially when they're not in charge. And for those of you on the call, you might be a part of projects with other managers or even with your leader. And sometimes if you're not taking the lead, you might feel a little demotivated. But being effective in your leadership is just when you're trying to be effective in your leadership, you need to also foster that growth mindset for other individuals. If you're taking on the lead constantly and other people aren't getting that opportunity to really step up, then they might not ever step up. And that's something to really consider when it comes to managing your team. Ask yourself, am I creating that environment that values and utilizes our team member strengths? Am I letting them step up? Am I letting them take the lead? Of course, you'll always need to support from the leadership aspect, but can you delegate that responsibility and that authority and really let people run with those projects? Be mindful of this if this is a trait that you have above the midline. Lastly, on the slide here, it talks about celebration. And for those of you who have high dominance, and especially too, if you don't have any other higher traits above the midline that maybe are supporting this, you might struggle to stop and celebrate. You're really good at driving towards your goals, but when you forget to pause and celebrate the wins along the way, you might lose people as you continuously drive towards your goals. I really recommend you stop and celebrate and reinforce that constantly within your team, as that really can boost morale. And even though you might not need the pat on the back, good job, the people around you might need that. So be very aware that just because it's not a preference or a need for you, it might be a preference or a need for somebody else. I want you to think to yourself, when's the last time you celebrated a team victory, big or small? For those of you who have that higher dominance on the call, does anybody want to chime in? Any strengths that they've really seen that they can maximize? Any areas that they feel like, I need to work on that? Would love to hear from anybody if you have that trait. Or even are you thinking of somebody maybe that you could support? Anybody have any thoughts? That's okay. Maybe this isn't your trait. Let's move on to extroversion. So where are my people with high extroversion? Extroversion above the midline. This is going to be the second column of your ProScan survey. So take a look there, take a peek, see if this is you. When we talk about, is that you?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. I would love to hear from you once we go through this. Let's see what you're thinking, what resonates with you. Typically, individuals with high extroversion are very natural communicators. It's very instinctual for them to get to know people. And from experience, from what I've seen, I'm always so impressed that my high extroverts can make friends basically anywhere they go. It is such a unique skill, and I wish I had that. Really, too, that ability to persuade and influence others around them to get things done is really effective, especially when it comes to the people side of things. That persuasion, that influence is a very natural strength for our high extroverted individuals. If you have that trait by chance, I want you to ask yourself, how often do you use your influence to build consensus within your team? I know you guys experience a lot of change, but if you have that high extroversion, you can really use that persuasion and that motivation to your advantage and really get your team bought in pretty quickly by using those engaging words and those motivating words that come so natural to you. In the spirit of collaboration within our high extroverts, it's very common for them to prefer teamwork over too much solitude. Usually it's more engaging and fun for them, so that's usually where they prefer. And also too, they love collaboration and brainstorming. If you by chance are a leader that has that high extroversion, when's the last time you led a brainstorming session that resulted in a unique solution? Do you ever do that with your team and promote that opportunity to brainstorm? An important aspect that we also see in our high extroverts is the desire to show up well and represent themselves well. They're usually very enthusiastic and friendly and approachable, and they trust others very quickly and they build their teams effectively. Really great at delegation and cheering the team along. I know I lean on my extroverts when I need some creativity in the mix or when I just need a fresh set of eyes to make this just a little bit more fun. If by chance you're on the call and you are a leader with this high extroversion trait, it's beneficial to learn your natural strengths, of course, but also too those areas where we can explore opportunities. When we think more so about your strengths, are there maybe networking opportunities that you can go to and explore? You're so good with your words and getting people excited. Can you spread the word a little bit more? Are there any team building activities that maybe need to be initiated? You're very creative and fun in that sense, and you're really good at getting people together. So have you dived into anything like that? Does the situation maybe need a positive energy and a good positive twist? I love my extroverts for that. They can make even the worst of things seem fun, and I so appreciate it. Maybe even too, there's certain practices within your own team where you'd like to improve communication. As high extroverts, you naturally have that inclination, so you'll want to support those around you when it comes to bridging the gaps, bringing people together and communicating more effectively. Use those strengths to your advantage, really push them to the team and really help people understand I'm here to support and I've got you. I did see some messages too on the chat talking about the survey. And for those of you on the call at the end, I'll have my email up on the screen. And if you're a manager who has not taken the pro scan yet, just let me know and I can connect you with the individuals over at CMS who can get you that pro scan, because this is a great first step for self-awareness. For those of you with high extroversion, I'd love to hear some of your strengths. How have you been able to really understand your strengths? How do you maximize those in your daily interactions? Anybody want to chime in?
I can.
Perfect.
Good morning. So yeah, I'm really high extroversion. So I think that my energy is really able to empower others to want to try hard.
Yeah.
So like yesterday, we're starting new processes. So just getting everybody pumped and motivated to have a better outcome if the process is followed through to completion. So it makes things fun. But then also it can be a downfall when on those days where you feel introverted and everybody expects you to be that outgoing person. But I think I'm pretty good at balancing when I'm feeling more introverted also.
Perfect. And that is such a great thing. Yeah, just because you're an extrovert doesn't mean you won't need your me time. That is so true. That's a great thing to share. Thank you. Anybody else have anything they want to chime in? Let's take a look at maybe some opportunities for awareness. For those of you who have that high extroversion, you have a very natural aptitude for communication, which is an awesome strength. But sometimes even too, this can also be a challenge. Sometimes our high extroverts struggle with maybe even over communicating. And for those of you that are on the call, maybe it's because, you have a lot to say and you want to get out all the information. Sometimes too, our high extroverts are big storytellers. So they start at the very beginning, maybe not realizing that this is over communicating or there's too much conversation. Really strive to be precise and concise in your precise and concise. Wow, those sound so similar in your communication, as that can really increase your effectiveness, especially with certain groups. If you're noticing that maybe your team is a little bit quieter, don't take that as a sign of disengagement or they're not listening to you. Be mindful, because sometimes individuals need to process, and when we keep throwing information at them, they're processing back all the way at the beginning still. So be mindful, look at those body cues, which is actually very natural for our high extroverts, and realize, what is that message that I need to convey? Even too, sometimes before you go into meetings, you can write down your points in order and just try to stick to that. Really open up that agenda, help people understand what you're talking about. You can even pre-set up people in your meetings with an agenda so they know what to come prepared to talk about. That can really help promote you staying on that topic, communicating just what you need to, and then being able to process and come prepared with some questions so they're more engaged in the conversation. Sometimes even too, our extroverts might struggle with active listening, maybe even too, just like listening in general. I know that this sometimes is a struggle when we're in conversations. And for those of you who have that higher extroversion, sometimes it can come from excitement, like, oh, we're on the same page and I want this to keep going, but I want you to be mindful. When we interrupt people, we pause them dead in their tracks. And sometimes those people might not feel confident to say, hey, I need to finish that thought, or that's not exactly what I was thinking. So be really mindful. A lot of the time I coach my individuals who have that high extroversion using the 3-second rule. And that just means, like, if you're talking to somebody and you feel the urge to speak and they're finished talking, and be mindful when I say this, finish talking. I'm a high patience individual. I have that trait above the midline. I take pauses in my conversations. So by really taking that time and waiting for them to stop talking, once they stop, you're going to count to 3 in your head. And I need like a full 3 Mississippi, like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. And then I want you to share. By giving that little pause in the environment, you make sure that that person's done talking and that it's your space, it's your time, and you're not interrupting them. The last one on this screen really here too, self-blame. This is also a big one for our high extroverts. And if you are this person, I want you to be aware, you are your own biggest critic. And that is through and through, doesn't matter the behavior. We are usually our own harshest critic. But especially too, if you have that high extroversion, you might feel even more so in this space. You really drive to impress others and make a positive impact. And it's really admirable. But at the same time, don't let this turn into self-blame when things don't go your way or when things go wrong. Instead, focus on the task at hand and the decisive action steps that can be taken next time to promote a better outcome. Usually too, we tell individuals, like, I want you to focus on the task. I don't want you to blame yourself. This task didn't do well. Here's what we can do with the task. I don't want you to say that you didn't do well or you aren't good at this. When you do that, it's only causing internal conflict and you're not going to feel good. And even too, when that project comes around the next time, you might look at it with a different perspective of, I failed at this last time and I don't want to do it again. Instead, look at them as opportunities for growth and opportunities to do better the next time, but not that you failed. For those of you who have that higher extroversion, for those awareness opportunities, does anybody struggle with that? Or maybe even something else, you're like, I think I struggle with this because of my extroversion. Where'd my slide go?
I think for me, at times, interrupting is a problem of mine at times.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for sharing.
Especially if we don't like agree with I'm working on it though.
Yeah, I always tell, like, I think it's a Walt Whitman quote, but Ted Lasso said it too. It's like, be curious, not judgmental. And it's sometimes hard too when we feel like we're right in a situation, not to just interrupt them to get to the point. But at the same time, seeking to understand, like, okay, this is how I think we should do it. Give me your perspective. I really want to understand where you're coming from. That can always be a great method. And I just saw somebody said their mic's not working, but they've struggled with interrupting as well, but they've grown in that area, which is awesome. And honestly too, for everybody on this call, if you're reading this and you go, I struggle with all of this, or, I'm learning how to move through some of this, wherever you are in your journey, please know it is okay. There's always a first step when it comes to self-awareness. And by using that ProScan tool, you can make that first step to really understanding yourself and how you're showing up. But just know you're always a work in progress. You're always improving. So don't be too hard on yourself, and just know that these are small actionable steps that you can take in the right direction by just having this information and knowing yourself a little bit better. Let's go ahead and pivot and talk about our high pace / patience individuals. This is that third column on the intensity chart, which is on page 3. So if you're looking at yours and you see that your trait is above
off the record training.
Sorry about that. If you see that your trait is above that midline, whether it's hovering right at that midline or just even a little bit above or all the way at the top, this one is for you. So one way that I love to describe high patience individuals is typically in this example, I always say, consider a train that consistently moves along its tracks. Typically, trains maintain a steady pace. They don't halt or speed up or slow down, really until they reach their destination. Trains and high patience people are very similar in that sense with their approach to tasks and goals. Typically, our high patience individuals are very persistent and they operate within a constant pace. When we look at our high patience people in the room, I'm very curious if you guys resonate with those words up on the screen, or even too, are there any other things that you see within your patients that really, are strengths within you, things that you see really interact in your team? When we see our high patience individuals, they usually have a very relaxed and patient demeanor, and they thrive on time to process before taking action. Observing that cause and effect is really valuable for them because they want to make sure that things are in harmony, that they're easy, that they're rolling with the punches, making it as good as possible, but still flowing. Usually their approach to communication is patient and understanding. And usually too, this trait can be a super valuable asset in situations that demand tact and diplomacy. Those high patience individuals are very aware of fairness and wanting to make things easy and right. So they can really take a look at those situations and want to make it fair and best for everybody around them. Usually they interact best in instances that require that patience or understanding. I love that my high patience individuals are very calm. I know when I'm around them, they just bring this sense of peace and calmness. And it really can help me sometimes bring down my levels if I'm maybe up here for the day. And naturally, they are peacemakers. They strive to create comfortable and harmonious environments. And usually they're very great listeners because they just really care. They just want to take care of people. They just want to take care of the team. If you are a manager with that high pace/patience, I really encourage you to utilize those strengths to your advantage. Are there any projects that need some more follow through and perseverance? That's natural for you. Are there maybe some team dynamics that could benefit from your steady influence or your patience? Are there maybe some situations that need some calm deliberation and thoughtful decision making? What about your stability and your reliability? Can you use that to enhance any procedures within your team right now? Use those skills to your advantage because they're natural within you. Anybody on the call with that high pace/patience resonate with some of those natural strengths? Anybody see anything specific that they really use in their day?
Patience, calm, dependable.
Perfect. I love that. I love too the dependability. You can really count, like when high pace/patience people say, I'm going to do this, and they're bought in, they will stop at nothing to do it. It's almost like tenacious in a sense. So yeah, that dependability is a great strength. For those of you that are on the call, if you are a leader with this high patience trait, just want to make you aware of some adjustments that might support you. So sometimes too, unexpected or abrupt changes can be challenging for individuals who have that higher pace/patience. Sudden changes can sometimes even too feel threatening to your routine, or you might not really understand fully what's needed to make this change. And so you're just like, I don't think we should do this. This will disrupt everything. So if you are in that space and you're feeling like you're putting up a wall when it comes to making changes happen, just know that is because you like to be routine oriented. You like things to be in that harmony, in that flow. But we can't always necessarily grow when we're staying in the same place. Stagnant things, we can't do much with that. So welcome that change a little bit. And if you find that you have doubts, clarify them. Go back to that person that you trust, gain their insight, talk to your team openly and gather that feedback so that you can really make sure that you're setting a positive example when it comes to changing the pace of the routine or just change in general. If by chance too, you are a person with that higher patience and you find that maybe procrastination is sometimes a challenge for you, this can sometimes be because maybe you're not sure about something, you don't understand it. Maybe somebody didn't give you a timeline or a deadline and you're like, I'm not sure if this is a priority. If you are this person, I really encourage you to ask more questions and to gain a little bit more clarity, and do not avoid it. When we procrastinate, we actually end up stressing ourselves out a little bit more. And if you are that higher patience individual, please know it will stress you out. So I encourage you to get started, even if it's just a small step, because it will put you one step in the right direction. what's that one saying? It's like a bunch of tiny steps gets, I don't even know what it is. I wrote it down somewhere one day. But basically, if you take a bunch of small steps, you will eventually get there. And so don't procrastinate, really see that challenge head on, even too, if you're maybe procrastinating, talking to somebody, having a conversation that's difficult, you need to meet them where they're at. When it comes to keeping the peace, even too, most of the time our high patience individuals really prefer harmonious environments. And it's really important to them to feel like they're in a peaceful environment. But sometimes this can make you avoid the necessary confrontations or even to hold back from keeping people accountable because you want to keep the peace. You might think to yourself, oh, they won't do that again, or, they learn from that, or they know that they, didn't need to do that, or, oh, they'll figure it out on their own. Not always the case. And as leaders, we do have to take that first step of having those difficult conversations. The longer we wait, the less valuable those conversations become. I really encourage you to practice what we call the 24-48 rule. And what that rule basically says is if something bothers you and you're still thinking about it after 24 hours, whether it's, an employee concern or the way somebody showed up or the way you showed up in a meeting, whatever the case may be, if you are still thinking about it after 24 hours, you have to go resolve that situation within 48 hours. Go have that conversation, because the longer you wait, the less impactful it is. You giving yourself a little bit of a deadline will help put some pressure on you that is healthy, that will help you have that conversation. But also too, it'll help show that person like, hey, I processed through this. I want to talk about this so that I can help you be better. Don't keep it in, let it out, whatever it might be. Give people that opportunity to make amends, give people that opportunity to discuss things with you. Keeping the peace is fantastic, but not when it causes internal conflict for you or conflict for your team. When we look at our high patience individuals, you guys bring this steadiness and this harmony and this resilience to your teams. So recognize your strengths and couple it with that mindfulness and those potential growth opportunities, as they can really elevate your skills, especially when it comes to leadership. Anybody on the call with that higher pace/patience recognize any of these opportunities for themselves?
Yeah, I do. With procrastination and keeping on pace, and I struggle out both of those at times.
Perfect. Well, hopefully some of those recommendations can support you just a little bit, but it just takes that time. It takes that awareness of, I'm procrastinating this. Why am I procrastinating it? Do I have too much on my plate? Can I reevaluate maybe some of those priorities and say, this one can move to next week, but this one needs to be my priority for the next 3 days. And if you're still unclear, always ask and resolve and get those questions answered. Even too, I sometimes find a quick Google search can get me the answers that I need. So whatever the case may be, it's always that opportunity to learn and to grow and to flex our strengths in a way that maybe we didn't even know was possible. Let's go ahead and talk next about that conformity. So looking at your intensity chart, this is that fourth column on the sheet, that last behavioral marker, which is conformity. If your trait is at or above the midline, this is for you. And even too, if you don't have that trait, think about the people on your team. Does this sound like somebody on your team? Can you maximize their talents a little bit more? Can you help them gain more self-awareness within their strengths or even opportunities for growth? When we look at when we look at individuals with high conformity, they naturally thrive in environments that value order, structure, or even to attention for detail. Usually their strengths lie within their commitment to precision and even to perfection. Usually they like to ensure that everything that they touch meets their highest standards of accuracy and correctness. And that is very common. Our high conformists have very high standards, and they know very strongly what is right and what is wrong. Typically, when they communicate, it's with a lot of attention to detail, and they make that detail really known. They like to provide things in order with steps and supporting documentation to make sure that everybody has that information to do the most right by the project, by the task, or even by the group. Usually too, when we need situations that need clarity or somebody with that meticulous eye, high conformists thrive. When we talk about our high conformists too, Usually they're very loyal to the people, the leader, the organization, once they're bought in and they establish that trust. But just know too, if you are a person with high conformity, trust is not built overnight for you. It takes some time. So realize those things, what makes me trust people? How can I do a better job of gaining trust within my team? Do they trust me? Do I trust them? Really do that self-reflection for yourself. Our high conformist leaders too are usually cautious about taking risks, and they want to make sure that if they are taking those risks, that it is extremely calculated. Typically, usually risk adverse because they just want to make sure that things are going right, that there's a structure and a system. If you are a manager with that high conformity trait, I really encourage you to understand your strengths and you use them to your full potential. Maybe even to think about, are there situations that need more attention to detail? Is there a project going on that needs somebody who is very naturally structured and can put things in order, in place? Maybe even too, there's a complex system that's being implemented and they need somebody who can carefully plan it out and structure it. That's a natural strength for you. Are there maybe challenges where accuracy and thoroughness could make a difference? That accuracy, that eye for detail is supernatural. Maximize those strengths. Maybe even too, thinking about your own team. Are there procedures, processes that aren't spelled out? Are there systems that aren't working for us? Your eye for improvement when it comes to those systems and processes is very, very keen. So use that to your team's advantage. Help them structure things. Help them give them that information that will really make them feel empowered to do a great job every single day. Anybody on the call, I saw some people in the chat talking about their conformity. Anybody want to chime in on some of the strengths that they see with their conformity?
Yeah, I can definitely.
Perfect.
So this wasn't surprising to me on the pro scan that I was really high on this one, and it really is a curse because especially in this job where there's so much attention to detail and there's so much detail to be known that I guess I fit well with that, but it's hard for me to work with people that aren't detail oriented. That's the biggest challenge for me.
And that's a great piece of self-awareness to have, because you will find that no matter where you go, that it is a struggle to work with people who have that opposite behavior trait, especially when it's a very strong trait for you. But even too, when you can bring behavior into the conversation of, I'm really good with the details. How about we start brainstorming? Maybe they have high extroversion and they can be the creativity person. You guys will collaborate and you're more of the detail person. It's finding that balance, and also too helping that person recognize, okay, I am more of this person, so I might have more of an eye for this. It's not coming from a place of criticism or a place from judgment. It's just because I really want us to make sure that we show up the way that we want to. Those can also be really helpful because, believe me, this is my driving trait too. I so feel you on this one. When we look at those other opportunities, if you're a leader with that high conformity, for anybody else on the call, sometimes, this can present a challenge. Your pursuit for perfection might even lead to sometimes even a little bit of rigidity. You really want to make sure that things are going right. Sometimes because we know that our high conformity individuals are very categorized by having a strong internal sense of this is right and this is not right, this is wrong. Sometimes it can lead to a tendency to judge others based off of your own perception of this is right or this is wrong. But be mindful of the skills and the perspectives within your team or within the project that you're working on if there's other people involved. And I want you to really be mindful of delivering feedback in a constructive and understanding manner. Maybe even to start with what's going right. What are those things that you really like about the project, the task, the individual? And always aim for improvement, not judgment. We're looking for curiosity. We're looking to gain more consensus, some more information. We're not looking to impose right or wrong on people, because sometimes that's when individuals shut down. Really try to foster that environment that leverages everyone's strengths, really get to know your team and leverage those abilities. Make sure you're celebrating the milestones along the way too, when it comes to our high conformists. And even too, you might be the silent judger. And if that's you, you might say like, oh, Adriana, I do not make judgmental comments, but I think it. If that is you, just be mindful of your facial expressions. If that is you, if any of you have met Donna from Know Your Talents, she has this very nice quote from Bruno Mars: Why you mad? Fix your face. And for those of you with my high conformity, this might be you. So if that judgment is coming across more in that sense, just be mindful. I've even seen leaders just put a mirror on their desk when they're in certain meetings, just so they can really see their face for what it's showing and make sure that it's aligning with what they want that person to see. When it comes to perfectionism and or high standards, sometimes managers with high conformity often have that pursuit of perfection. You know, they want things to be 100% right. And it might end up leading them to having really high standards. Self-awareness is really key here in recognizing your desire for perfection and understanding its root cause. Are you driven maybe even by that fear of failure or maybe a need for control within the situation? Recognize that impact, because when you're perfectionistic, it sometimes trickles to the people around you and even to those high standards. It's definitely a gift that you have this attention to detail, but don't let it trickle too far where people feel discouraged because they can't meet this standard. You know, think about it. When you were working on this, did you get it the first time? Did it take you a few times to learn this? Have a little bit of that empathy in the conversation and realize that not everybody will be perfect. None of us are perfect, and that's okay. We just need to fail fast and have some more understanding and conversation when we have those situations occur. When we look at the last bullet up here, worrying, sometimes even too, our high conformists tend to really worry about, you know, things being right, whether it's a structure or even to taking a risk. They just don't want things to go awry. They want it to go very much according to the plan. And sometimes that can result in anxiety or worry if things feel like they're not going according to plan. Really acknowledge that worrying is optional. It is a self-inflicted emotion that we do to ourselves when we're uncertain or unsure of something. Majority of the things that you guys worry about probably won't even happen. And it's a lot of energy that you're spending in this space, in that worrying space, that anxiety space. It is not a fun space to be in. And I'm sure all of you on this call, whether you have this trait or not, have all been in that space where you're just worried about something, you have anxiety, and it's not healthy. It doesn't feel good. So I need you to relinquish that just a little bit. If you feel like you have a lot of information in your head, you're just worrying about something, I always go back to like the school format back when you're in like math class, long algebra, geometry, yuck. When you were in those classes, you never did all that math in your head. You always wrote out your problems and you solved them. You put it on that piece of paper. And if you still didn't get it, you'd walk up to a teacher, walk up to a friend, a mentor, and you get some more consensus on that answer. Just like that, your problems sometimes need to just get out of your head so that you can stop that worrying. You know, really consider, why am I feeling like this? Can I talk to somebody about this? Can I see this from a different perspective? Maybe even too, relying on somebody who has that opposite behavior of you, just ask them, what do you think about this? Can really help you gain that perspective. When we look at our high conformity in general, you guys have these amazing, amazing strengths with your standards and you're being detail oriented, but you also too have to keep in mind sometimes how that shows up, whether it's for yourself or even to that picture for other people. Anybody on the call with that higher conformity see any opportunities of awareness for themselves? Whether it's something I said, or you're like, I struggle with this though. No worries. Let's go ahead and get to the next slide. When we have self-awareness, it's really paramount to our success in multiple aspects of our lives. Just like when we talked about in the beginning, the benefits of the negatives if we don't have self-awareness. When we have self-awareness, we are just in our zone. We're very mindful of the way that we're coming across. We're very mindful of our strengths and where to plug them in our tasks and activities. We communicate a little bit differently. We build our relationships in different ways. We make decisions that are informed based off of who we actually are and what we actually believe. And even too, we have better performance overall because we're able to maximize ourselves. We're able to maximize our relationships and really get to that end goal that we're striving for. For those of you that are on the call, I definitely want to give you this little call to action and some just questions and tips to ask yourself. As we get to our next session next month, I would love if some of you would take this time over the next 30 days just to do a little bit more self-reflection. I would love you to pull up your pro scan and ask yourself these 3 questions. What are your strengths? What are your areas of opportunity, whether you learn them from this presentation or you're reading through the pro scan and you go, this is what I want to work on. And can you think of a situation where knowing your behavior could have changed the outcome? I think about plenty of situations where just knowing myself a little bit better could have helped me help other people understand me better. Even too, when it comes to, having a driving conformity trait, I get stuck sometimes. I want things to be perfect and I won't let go of something until it is. That is a big awareness that I've had to have. And sometimes too, I have to involve other people in my projects because it's helping me learn that good is sometimes good enough. So involve people in that journey. And even too, I have another prompt up here. This is just an exercise. If you have the time to do it, I really recommend, because it can help you put into perspective too, not only your own self-awareness of like how you are, but also too, what's the perception? What are people picking up? Up here, it says, reach out to 3 people you trust. It could be friends, family, or even your colleagues, and ask them for constructive feedback on your behavior. And you can use the following questions. What do you believe are my strengths? Where do you think I can improve? And can you recall a situation where our behavior positively or negatively affected the outcome? Take that first step in learning yourself, and then go over to your people and learn more about the perception. The person we show up as every single day when we walk into work, when we hop onto Teams or Zoom with our people, is the person that people know. So being mindful of how you show up, how you can maximize your strengths and support other people so that they feel collaborative environments and included, that's the ticket to really getting to that next level of your leadership. Being able to say, I'm wrong, and being able to apologize. Being able to say things like, I have that perfectionism gene in me, and I want to make sure that I let go of that a little bit so that I can encourage my team. Maybe too, it's saying things like, I don't want to be the lead on this project anymore. I need to take a step back and let my team really shine. Whatever the case may be, this self-awareness is a gift, and I hope you all take advantage of that pro scan and using this gift to your advantage. Up on the screen here, I do have my email address. So if by chance you have any questions more so about your profile or anything like that, feel free to ping me. I can always support. And on the right-hand side of the screen today is a evaluation. So if you have your phone, you can scan it QR code really quick. This just helps us make sure that the content that we provided with you today and in the future meets your needs. And if there's something else you're struggling on, we want to hear it so that we can make sure we support you with that. As we end for our time for today, we do have 5 minutes. So I do want to open up the floor for questions or comments or anything that you guys need from me that I could explain further, anything like that. So let's start with our questions. Anybody have anything that they want to share? Are we feeling good? Do we feel like we learned some self-awareness today, whether it's in your strengths or your opportunities?
Definitely in opportunities.
Awesome.
And in our strengths. Or my strengths.
Perfect, Stephen. Thank you. Alrighty, awesome. Well, thank you all so much for your participation today. And if we don't have any questions, then I'll end our session here for today. Just want to say a big thank you for those of you who attended, and for anybody watching this virtual via recording. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Really invite you guys to take that next step in your self-awareness and to reach out if you have any questions or concerns, because we're all in this together and we can only get better by taking those steps in the right direction. So thank you all so much. Have a fabulous rest of your week. Take care, recharge your batteries this weekend, and I'll hope to see you next month.